People ask me sometimes how I ended up where I did, how a kid with nothing became a man with more brothers than he could count. I tell them it started on a Tuesday evening in October, on a two-lane highway outside a town that barely had a name, when I was 10 years old and the light was going out of the sky like somebody had turned a dial. I was walking the shoulder of Route 9, the way I walked it most evenings after school, because the house on Grover Road had nothing in it for me, except a uncle who watched television with the sound too loud and a kitchen with not much in the cabinets. I wasn't unhappy about the walk. The highway was mine in the evenings. Trucks blew past, and the air smelled like diesel and cut corn, and that far-out smell of distance that I never could name, and I was free in a way that a boy with walls around him never is. I heard the crash before I saw it. Not a big crash, more like a hard sliding sound, a scrape, something heavy meeting the gravel berm at speed. I ran toward it without thinking. That was always my way. You hear something wrong, your feet move. It was maybe 200 yards down the road, around a soft bend where the shoulder narrowed, and the ditch ran deep. He was down the ditch with his bike half on top of him. Big man, heavy leather vest, the kind of boots that take work to pull on in the morning. He was conscious, but not by much. His left leg was pinned under the bike at a bad angle, and there was a cut on his head that had sent blood down the sides of his face and dried there, in the cooling air. I slid down the ditch bank, and I did not run away from the sight of him, though part of me understood I probably should. I got the bike off his leg with everything I had. He helped some, pushing with the arm that worked. The bike went over in the weeds, and he let out a sound I will never forget. Not a scream, just a deep, involuntary thing. The sound a man makes when pain exceeds what words can carry. I had my jacket. It was a school jacket, thin green, with the name of a team I didn't play for, printed on the chest. I put it over him because the air was going cold in a hurry, the way October air does, in Kansas when the sun drops. He looked at me. His eyes were dark and steady even through the pain, and I could see him taking me in. A scrawny 10-year-old with dirty sneakers crouched over him in a ditch. "You got a phone, son?" he said. I did not. My uncle did not see the need for me to have a phone. I told him so plainly. He almost smiled. Then he told me his name was Dale, and I told him mine was Robbie. And we shook hands there in the ditch like men being introduced at a church social, which seemed right to both of us somehow. I couldn't go for help without leaving him, and leaving him felt wrong. The nearest house was more than a mile. Trucks passed above us on the road, and I waved at two of them, but the shoulders were dark by then, and nobody stopped. I stayed. I sat with him in the ditch through the cooling dark, and I kept him talking because I had a sense, the way children sometimes do, that talking was what was keeping him here. I asked him where he was from and where he was going. I asked him about his bike. I asked him if he had family. He told me about his brothers. Not blood brothers, he said, but the kind that mattered more, the kind you chose and who chose you back. He said their name was the Iron Covenant, and he said it the way a man says the name of something sacred. An hour in, maybe closer to 2, a truck finally stopped. A cattle farmer named Herschel, driving home late, saw us in his headlights and came down the bank with a flashlight and a cell phone. And the calm that comes from a lifetime of handling things that go wrong in the dark. He called for an ambulance. He gave me a blanket from his cab. He sat with us until the lights came. Dale went in the ambulance. Herschel drove me home. My uncle looked up from the television long enough to say I was late and then looked back. That was the whole of it. I didn't think much more about that night. Life went back to what it was. The long walks, the thin kitchen, the loud television, school in between. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, a single motorcycle turned onto Grover Road and parked in front of the house. I was in the yard when it came. The man who got off was tall, gray at the temples, with a beard cut close and eyes that had the quality of taking in a great deal very quickly, without showing what they found. He wore the same kind of leather vest Dale had worn, with the same patch on the back, a set of linked rings over an iron cross. He said his name was Carver, and that he was the president of the Iron Covenant, and that Dale had told him what I did. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the house. He didn't say anything about what he saw, but I watched him see it. The peeling porch boards, the empty flower boxes, the window with the cracked glass that had been cracked since before I came to live there. He knocked on the door, and my uncle answered, and they spoke for a while in low voices on the porch. I stayed in the yard. My uncle went back inside, and Carver came and sat on the porch step and talked with me for almost an hour. He asked about school. He asked what I liked. He asked if I was all right, and I told him yes, the way you tell an adult yes when you are a child and do not know how to say anything else. He shook my hand when he left, the same way Dale had. He said he'd be back. I believed him. I don't entirely know why. Something in the steadiness of his eyes, maybe. The way he said it. Not the way adults say things to children to make them feel better, but the way a man states a fact he intends to be responsible for. He was back in 3 days. He was not alone. I heard them before I saw them. I was inside, at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, and the sound started as a low vibration that I felt in the soles of my feet before it reached my ears. Then it built. A rolling, layered thunder that came from the direction of the county road, and grew until the windows hummed with it. I went to the door. They were coming down Grover Road in a column. Not 10, not 20. They filled the road from side to side, 2 and 3 abreast, a river of chrome and leather and engine noise that stretched back around the bend until the tail of it was out of sight. 127 riders. I know the number because Carver told it to me later, told it to me as a fact worth knowing, the way you tell a child the exact size of something, so they understand it is real. They parked along both sides of the road and in the field, across the fence. And they stood beside their bikes and they did not make noise. That was the thing I remember most. 127 men with engines off, standing quiet in the afternoon light on a gravel road in Kansas, and the silence they made together was louder than the machines had been. Carver walked up to the porch. My uncle was already at the door. I do not know what was said between them. I was at Carver's side, not in the room, but it did not take long, and when my uncle came out, he had a look on his face of a man who has run a calculation and found the arithmetic very clear. He did not make trouble. He did not argue. He nodded once at Carver and went back inside. Carver looked down at me. He said, the brothers of the Iron Covenant had voted. Dale's life was mine, in the way that one person can owe another the truest debt there is. And a life like that gets repaid in full, or it doesn't get repaid at all. He asked me if I'd be willing to let them be responsible for me. Not a foster arrangement, not a legal word, just the word of the club, spoken to me and to anyone who needed to hear it. I said yes. My voice didn't shake. I was 10 years old, and I said yes, the way you say yes to something you have been waiting for without knowing it. Dale was there, at the back of the column, on crutches, his legs still healing. He made his way up when Carver waved him forward. And he stood in front of me and he said, you stayed. Most people don't stay. I thought about that walk home that evening. The thin jacket I had given away, the cold in the ditch, and the long dark, and the choice that had not felt like a choice at all. Only like the next right thing. I'm 41 years old now. I have a family and a trade, and a name that means something in the chapter I belong to. I have been to the funerals of 3 brothers, and the weddings of more than I can count on both hands. I have ridden in columns that stretched for miles. I have stood in front of doorways, the way Carver stood in front of mine, and I have tried to have his eyes, the kind that take in a great deal quickly and give back steadiness. People ask how I got here. I tell them a scrawny kid in a green jacket gave everything he had to a stranger in a ditch, and learned that some debts the whole brotherhood carries, because that is what brothers are for. That is the whole of it.